Weekly Renewal is brought to you by Calvo Select Care.
Half a day. I'm Claire Calvo, bringing you your weekly renewal. Today I am here with two wonderful friends. I'm here with Marie Monge and Leslie Leon Guerrero. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So May is, among other things, I mean, each month there's so many things going on, but Lupus Awareness Month. And I know both of you personally, and I know each of you have your own journey. Can you each share? Maybe we'll start with you, Leslie.
Yeah, sure. I have, it's so funny because we were trying to do the quick math in our head because we've been living with this for so long. I've had lupus since 2010. I was diagnosed, so my symptoms probably were presenting for about a year or two before they actually diagnosed me.
I'm sorry, when you say symptoms, like what was showing up?
So my first symptom was a small, tiny bald spot on the side of my head. I had really long, thick hair, and so that one spot kind of stood out because it was completely bald. The spot got bigger and bigger, and soon there was another one, and two grew into one big one. And so I was lucky because I was traveling back and forth to the States, and I was visiting my dad. And I decided to do some research and go into a dermatologist to find out what was going on. And they biopsied that bald spot, sent it off, and basically called me back a day later to say, hey, I need you to come back in because this looks like something more than just alopecia. Because that's what, I mean, alopecia is common, stress-related. You could just relax, treat it topically. And then they asked me to start to see and get some blood work done to find out what it's going to be. And they thought it was discoid lupus, which is lupus of the skin. And so after some back and forth, traveling from here to Guam, and after a pretty high ANA result, which is one of the first tests they want you to do, they found out that I did have lupus, but more tests would be needed to find out what exactly type of lupus it was. And so we go through a series of tests, and in order to do a lupus diagnosis, you have to kind of put all the pieces of the puzzle together. So they do a series of tests, and if this is positive, and this is positive, and this is positive, then together they know you have some type of autoimmune disease, but they just need to figure out what type it is. And no one on Guam could do it at the time, so I had to go off island to Hawaii. And that's where they did a whole other series of tests and discovered that I did have lupus. It wasn't lupus of the skin, but it was systemic lupus, so a lupus that could attack any organ within your body. At that time, it just happened to be my skin. And then today, it affects my skin, my kidneys, and my stomach, so 3 different areas.
I did not realize that it was specific with lupus. I thought it was just a systemic autoimmune. I didn't realize that it's specific to organs and to...
There's this SLE or systemic, which is what Leslie and I have, but then there is also discoid, which is limited to skin, and nephritis, which is lupus nephritis, which is limited to kidneys. Or with SLE, though, it could be any system of the body, I think, at any given time.
So Marie, can you share a little bit about the symptoms that showed up before you actually went and were diagnosed?
Well, with me, it was 2003. I was a young mother, and mine presented first in my joints. And, you know, 29, you're not so vigilant about your health.
Right.
So I was, first thinking, maybe, because I was working a lot, and maybe I have carpal tunnel syndrome, right? And just I was buying like over-the-counter things like glucosamine. And,
Right.
And then I thought, maybe, because I'm not I'm not that coordinated. I think I was taking some kind of aerobic class, and I thought, maybe I'm doing the moves wrong. But then it just slowly became kind of just my joints to the point where I couldn't even hold a cup. And then I started to get these low-grade fevers. And it was weird because every night, like clockwork, I feel okay in the morning. After work, every night, I just felt like it basically like something turned a switch off in me. Like as soon as I just didn't feel good. I kind of felt exhausted, but it was just like a low grade and had low grade fevers. And so after about a month of that, I think it was probably, I don't remember the exact date, but it was about probably February of 2003. I also did a series of tests on Guam. And again, clinically, my physician thought thought that it could be lupus, but again, he wasn't a rheumatologist, and he said, told me, if you can, I would go to see a rheumatologist off island. I did in California, and I was diagnosed as well with SLE. At the time, I was put on medication, and he thought it to be moderate or a mild case. He said, if it's limited to your joints, you should be okay. Don't stress out. He told me, don't go Google everything on the internet,
Right.
because that's gonna
Anxiety.
give you anxiety. But curiously enough, I did. I was put on prednisone, which is a steroid, some other medication. Came back to Guam, and it just seemed like my flare just ignited. I started to have problems with my kidneys, my liver, and then ultimately, after about a year or so, I think the worst thing that's ever happened to me is that I had pericarditis, which is the lining of my heart became inflamed. And I had to kind of take a sabbatical and stay in California for a bit to get treatment.
That was a few years after
That was probably
the initial onset?
It was, probably almost 2 years after the initial onset, but about a year after I was diagnosed.
So I know you both said that back then you had to go off island, but you said that currently there is a rheumatologist now in Guam?
Yeah, I know GRMC has a rheumatologist. I have not seen him. I've seen the same rheumatologist since I was diagnosed in 2010. But I know, there's so many people with lupus. We meet them at different events, and I'm glad that there's finally somebody here, because not a lot of people have the resources to travel off island to seek care or to get a proper diagnosis.
Yes.
And so that's huge for Guam.
Yes.
And as you said, with autoimmune, it's kind of like, because there's someone in my family, in my immediate family, who also has an autoimmune disease, and it was almost like a process of elimination, like check for this. Like it just seems like a narrowing down that, when you get down to it, it just sounds like such a tiring journey. And so my next question is, what helped you through, especially through the hardest times? What did you find to be helpful? I'm sure there are things that triggered, did you feel like the onset or the inflammation, or are there things that seemed like they helped?
Well,
Not just
there's a lot.
dietarily, but
But that's a huge part of it, I think.
Yes.
Your diet, that's what, anybody who has lupus knows you have a series of medication depending on whether your lupus is flaring or not. And the last thing you want is to take another drug. And so I think, at least for me, it's like what you eat, really, you can control a lot of those symptoms, or at least minimize them. And then just movement, I think, is so important. I exercise a lot, and I exercise because that's the only way my joints won't hurt. And it seems like counterintuitive if you think about, oh my God, my joints are hurting. The last thing I want to do is go lift weights or move it. But it really does help. And that's what I tell a lot of the girls who have lupus, that you're in so much pain right now. Everything's so stiff. Your wrists hurt, your ankles hurt because you're not moving. And they can't see the fact that if you just start moving a little bit, your body will feel better.
Right.
And that's how I stay off of a lot of my medication. But diet and exercise, to me, really, really, really help.
Yeah.
And then mentally, depression is common in a lot of people with lupus. But I feel like the more you get out, the more you don't feel sorry for yourself, the more you surround yourself with positive energy, that helps.
yeah.
And I think Leslie and I now, I'm sorry I'm speaking for you,
No.
but I feel like we're at a point where we can do advocacy, and we have been, when we meet somebody who's had lupus, I know that, individually in sharing stories, we see what they're going through and we can empathize.
Right.
And it's been a long journey to get where we are, to have this confidence and faith that, these measures will make a huge world of difference.
Yeah.
But there was a time where I don't know how else to describe it, but if you feel like you have a black cloud hanging over you and you're just wondering what next. And faith is a big part of just believing that you can get better. But when you're in that dark place and suffering, I think that brings on depression.
Right.
And that's something that having people that can advocate and to share their stories with you, give you hope. With me, I advocate for a healthy diet too. It's now try to do things in moderation, but
Yeah.
there was a time in when I was suffering from a really extreme flare. I turned to a vegan diet, just with anti-inflammatory foods, and that really helped me get to a better place.
And that was, you joined SDA.
I
right?
did. I did the New Start, and that was my first introduction to vegan food, or to eating a vegan diet rather. And it, I joined with my husband. Having a support system is key too. So my husband jumped on with me, and we said, okay, we're going to do this together. And we ate that way we ate strict vegan for about a little over 12 years, until I was able to manage my health more. And now we still enjoy ourselves with different foods, but for the most part, diet is important. And I think if you feel the onset of a flare-up, that it's good to check yourself, right? It
Right.
gives you those checks and balances. And exercise as well. I feel like before I was diagnosed, exercise was something, again, I was in my late 20s, so
Right.
exercise was something that seemed optional.
Yeah.
Now it's something that I need to just try to push through, even when I'm
You've
tired.
done a marathon. I mean,
or-
you've
yeah.
really come a long way.
But it really is. It's so critical to just just maintaining your health. And like you said, there are some days where you're just like, I'm sore, I can't do
Yeah.
this, and you're experiencing different symptoms, but just try to do even the bare minimum, just getting some
Well, it's
activity
like
in.
a machine. If you don't get it moving, it gets stagnant, and then there's no
Yeah.
flow, then it'll break.
Exactly.
They say if you don't use it, lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say going through those 12 years of primarily vegan, you found that it helped quite a bit? Because I know there's so many mixed messages now. Some say, oh, no, you should have some animal protein. And of course, it varies. We're not all the same. But you did feel like it helped with the inflammation?
I think it did overall. I think looking at anti-inflammatory foods, and I think the fact that it affected my kidney and my liver during some flare-ups, that not having animal protein was a definite, benefit. It helped me heal.
How are you guys now? Like, do you have sugar? Do you intake sugar? Or
Oh,
are you pretty strict?
sugar is my favorite food group. And I know it, and I know when I feel something, I'm like, oh man, I know why. And then you just got to clean up that diet. But
Yep.
animal protein has never been an issue for me because I don't like meat.
Oh,
okay.
good.
Yeah, so
Good
that's
for you.
easy for me. My thing is the sugar.
Yeah.
Sugar and inflammation are like the worst.
Exactly. And I'm
Yeah.
the same way. So
Mine's
I feel you.
dairy.
Yours is dairy? Oh, I love
my
cheese. Cheese and sugar.
goodness.
Yeah, but we know
I
why I
know.
feel certain ways,
See,
and
so
then
you
I know
guys
how to
are
correct
already
it.
able to gauge it. You know your
Yeah.
body intimately enough, and you've journeyed with this for long enough, so you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those who are probably just finding out or are probably wondering, and what advice can you offer? Well, I know there's an organization,
so
right?
loaded.
Yeah.
There's the Lupus Awareness.
Lupus Awareness Group of Guam. They have meetings every once in a while. I know this coming up for Lupus Awareness Month, we both just got the email that they are having a mass on May 25th at 5 o'clock at Sinahanya Church, followed by, I think they're having like a fellowship afterwards, and you can talk to more people who have lupus and kind of share stories and share resources. But I think my advice would be listen to your body if something doesn't feel right. I think fatigue is another really big indicator. I know I had it, and many people who have just started to figure out like, oh, maybe this is something more. It's extreme fatigue like you've been up for days and you sleep a lot. So that's another symptom. But I mean, talk to your doctor, ask questions, do some research, and don't just settle for, I just don't feel good for any prolonged period of time. Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's one of the tricky things too, is again what you were saying, listen to your body, because lupus primarily, it presents itself in primarily women, but some men, but they say, I think the primary ages are usually between the ages of 15 and 45, although they're younger people on the spectrum as well as older.
Yeah.
But that's the age where you're just living your best life,
Right.
where you're not vigilant
Right.
about your health. But it's that if you feel something that's chronic, just pay attention and don't be afraid to ask your doctor. I think culturally sometimes we're afraid to go to a doctor and say that this hurts or that hurts. It's like, oh, I'll just take this over the counter, or I'll get over it. Or I think it's just to be aware. And I think and if you are diagnosed, just seek out other people who've been there. And I think that Leslie and I, I speak for you when I say that, because I know we always share with each other what we're going through. You just find people who can help you feel like, because there is hope. There's always hope, and it's something that's manageable. If it's just, it takes some discipline and vigilance.
And it helps to talk to someone who's going through the same thing as you, so that you don't feel like, oh my God, okay, it's just me, or nobody knows what I'm going through. It helps when someone says, oh yeah, I could sleep for days and still be tired. Like, just talking to someone like that and having them have that understanding, they're like, oh my God, okay, I feel so much better.
Well, because I could imagine, for one thing, you're already dealing with the physical symptoms, but then to deal with that whole mental, emotional component is huge. So definitely see the importance of support. And I'm sure there are those who are going to probably turn to you guys or want to be able to reach out. Is there any way that they could reach you both, or?
Yes, we're not formally organized as a group, but again, I've talked to people that, that people just know me from word of mouth, that heard, and I'm sure this is, but and so you can email me, mcalvo I'm looking directly into the camera, at kuam.com. I'm also on social media, so I'm an open book when it comes to lupus, because I want other people to feel, I've had some dark days, to feel that they're not alone, and I've managed this disease for 2 decades, and there's highs and lows, but it's finding your support system, and it doesn't have to be formal.
Yeah. Same with me. And then also, I know the Lupus Awareness Group of Guam is on Instagram and Facebook, so you can always look them up, or shoot any of us a message. We'll be happy to talk to anybody.
Thank you so much, ladies.
Of
I admire you.
course.
Is there anything else you would like to share before we close?
Friday, May 10th is Put on Purple for Lupus Awareness Day. So we're wearing our purple today, but we just invite the whole community to join us. And again, the Lupus Awareness Group of Guam is having a mass on the end of the month on the 25th.
25th. Okay, so this Friday is the
May 10th, yes.
And where is it going to be?
Oh, it's anywhere.
Oh, wherever you're at. Just
Wear your purple.
Got it.
Tag us on social media, or tag Lupus Awareness Group of Guam, or I think it's called POP, Put on Purple.
Put on Purple Day, yes. Yeah, use your hashtags.
That's an easy way to remember. And then the 25th will be the Mass at St. Jude's Church.
Yes. And you can follow, as Leslie mentioned, they're on Instagram and Facebook, I believe.
All right, thank you, and thank you. I will see you next time on your Weekly Renewal.
Weekly Renewal is brought to you by Calvo Select Care.